That's Fraser Mort. Now, a man accused of killing a Scottish woman in Athens and then disposing of her body in a suitcase has appeared in court for a second consecutive day. Our Scotland correspondent Conor Gillis sent this report from the Greek capital.
Did you kill Elizabeth?
Did you kill Lisa?
What have you got to say to Elizabeth's family?
Are you sorry? Did you know her?
For many days, Greek officials have been on the hunt for the truth. Today, they came to court in a case that has more questions than answers. This is the dark, dingy, abandoned warehouse here in Athens, where a body was found inside a suitcase, and they were the remains of British aid worker Elizabeth Jane Ross from Edinburgh. Now, authorities here in Greece say it was difficult to identify her, given her body wasn't discovered for days in a heat wave close to 40 degrees. But they finally got fingerprints after a homeless man entered here and alerted them to this grim discovery. And look, it is a grim sight altogether. There are flies everywhere, gas canisters, there are tents, food products that have been there for months, mattresses lying on the floor, and also drug paraphernalia as well.
This used to be a gas station. We used to park our cars there, but then it closed down. I got goosebumps. It was a shock. It's horrible. Horrible. For any person, this is a horrible thing to happen.
Elizabeth, who was known to family as Lisa, came here at the end of June and was staying with friends. She vanished weeks later. The prime suspect is Afghan champion boxer Sharif Amazai, who apparently set up a refugee charity in Athens after being orphaned in his home country. This is the apartment where Elizabeth had been staying, and it is thought where she died. We know that her body was removed through this walkway in the middle of this apartment block in a suitcase. And Greek policing sources are suggesting that the suspect's phone pinged in this location on a location-sharing app. They suggest when he left this apartment block, he spent thousands of euros extracting money from Elizabeth's bank accounts over the course of the next few days. These are allegations that are central to this mystery. Concern too for neighbours like this man who doesn't want to be identified.
What do you make of the fact that this has happened here in your building?
I mean, it's terrible because when I saw the news that they found a girl in a luggage, but then when I saw the police here, I thought, okay, this might be linked. So it's kind of distressing because living in a place where you know that something might have happened.
CCTV footage captured the moment a suitcase was wheeled through the streets. As police allege, the suspect's wife has been key.
The wife of the Afghan was a great help because as soon as the Greek media published the identity of the dead woman, she left the house. Because she recognized that this was the woman that was staying at the flat where, according to a smartphone application, her husband had visited and spent several hours during the night of July 15th.
Here at this courthouse, Amazai faces a charge of intentional homicide, the Greek equivalent of murder in the UK. The system here would have allowed him to give his version of events today, but he chose not to, staying silent. He can now be detained for up to 18 months as this case draws international attention. Conor Gillis, Sky News in Athens.
It's been reported from Iran this evening that a deal between them and Oman to reopen the Strait of Hormuz could ban the United States, Israeli and other so-called hostile vessels from the strait. The two nations have been in talks over the use of the waterway in recent weeks, and Tehran insists that the US has no involvement in the talks, which appears to contradict President Donald Trump. Let's bring in our military analyst, Sean Bell, who's with me in the studio. Look, we've had a few days of yet another fragile ceasefire, Sean. You never know how long these things are going to last. But what are the prospects for these current talks of, at least in part, reopening the strait?
Well, Matt, good evening. We're almost in uncharted waters here because it was America that went to war. They've been effectively threatening Iran with retaliation if they don't agree to talks. And suddenly, day 160 of this 4 to 6 week war, suddenly we find that actually despite Trump's initial threats, then a bit of a fragile ceasefire, that actually it looks like the prospects that two sides, now why is it Oman and Iran, both sides of the Strait of Hormuz, Oman to the southern side, and now what we understand is that the agreement between them has been that Tehran will look after traffic that's coming into the Strait of Hormuz, which will be the northern route, and on the southern route, then that will be the route by which Oman looks after the traffic going out. It's not entirely clear how they're going to manage the minefield, which it may be there's no minefield there at all. We just don't know. But I think what's fascinating about this, first of all sides want to see the Strait of Hormuz open, and therefore it seems a masterstroke. The challenge, of course, is it doesn't look like a complete snub of the Americans here. It's not entirely clear what the US view of any deal was, because obviously they said they're dead against any charges or anything like that. And it's also, where is the status of the blockade that the US have got in place? All of this seems to have happened completely independently of the US, and it leaves all sorts of questions unanswered.
Well, the main one being, Sean, where does this leave that wider conflict, which keeps flaring up, and progress with curtailing Tehran's nuclear ambitions, which was at the root cause of a lot of this in the first place for the Americans?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. For me, remember their MOU that was signed on the 17th of June, 14-point plan. Okay, part of it is Strait of Hormuz, but the meat of it was this business about nuclear. I think the trouble is we got closer and closer to the midterm elections. We play them down a bit, but it's really important for the US. We're less than 90 days now from the midterms. Over 60% of the American population is an unpopular war. Inflation's rife, gas prices are high. So actually, in a way, any deal that gets the Strait of Hormuz is better. The challenge, of course, where does that leave the nuclear negotiations, though? Because if Trump starts to negotiate with Iran and goes back to suddenly threatening them, they'll just close the Strait of Hormuz. We'll be back to square one again. So actually what's happening here, Iran has played a masterstroke in as much that they've now got a huge amounts of leverage. They'll be using unfreezing assets, getting rid of sanctions, all of these things that will be at play. It feels very likely that Donald Trump will just breathe a sigh of relief, get through the midterms, play all of the conversation about nuclear long, and potentially see a return to violence after the midterm elections. But my goodness, it's been a really weird few days to see this as the outcome, with America not even involved in the conversation.
Well, that's the question. Has there been any reaction from them yet? And if not, you would expect it fairly soon from Trump, wouldn't you?
You would, and I wouldn't be at all surprised. And the danger is we're trying to get inside President Trump's head. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he's really frustrated and even angry about this. But his advisors will be going, hang on a minute, regardless of how we get there,
take the opportunity.
Take the opportunity and actually claim some credit for how it happens, get the straits open, get oil prices down, and then move on in the fullness of time. At least you start to get your fingers out of this mangle, which is incredibly dangerous at the moment for Trump.
Which, despite the US and Israeli superiority when it comes to firing missiles, it ends up looking a bit like a win for Iran, doesn't it?
I think the history books will be written with this, how the global superpower brought all its military might to bear against Iran, which frankly was a second to third rate nation when it came militarily, absolutely militarily dominated, but actually failed to learn the lessons from history, failed to listen to the wargaming, which said this was the inevitable outcome. And now Iran will emerge. They started off as a pariah state before this war. They're now going to emerge as a regional power, potentially with the control of the Strait of Hormuz and significant leverage against the rest of the world. Who could have predicted that when the war was started by President Trump?
Absolutely. Sean, thank you very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. Coming up, families in Ukraine who are forced into the metro every night by President Putin's unrelenting attacks. We have a special report from Kyiv.